Good afternoon. So in this video, I shall, for the first time, discuss something that I have not discussed at all. I mean, in the last, since the beginning of this journey, 4.5 years ago. Not even in a kind of like in a hint. It's really a new topic that I think about in the last couple of days. Of course, I do not just think about it. I mean, I would say that this is something like a topic that is injected, very strongly by the various intelligence agencies of this world. I don't know for what reason, for what purpose. Because on surface level, it's not that important. It's kind of like a minor. On surface level, it's a minor topic, minor issue. I mean, not of a great significance. I mean, as in itself, it could have been like a huge issue, but I mean, when compared to the end of the world and the end of humanity, and the cannibalism of humankind, and the systematic rape and torture that is done by humankind for so long, I mean, this is not like the most important issue, I would say. That's why I didn't speak about it too much in the past. Even though I should say that I have kind of a remote, very remote, personal, I would say, kind of a connection to it, like in a very remote way, I would say. I'm aware of the subject, let's say, but it just wasn't the main concern. But it's kind of pushed probably by the Israelis for some reason. I don't know why. I mean, you can never know how do they think, because mainly they do not think. It's just, it's a bunch of prostitutes that, barfing on the keyboard. Anyway, since it's a new issue, I might just, mention it. But I would say that I don't have any conclusion on the matter or anything very definite to say. So it's just things that I will kind of present to the audience as reference points, for future research or thought, and without, on surface level, without tremendous implication, but maybe it's kind of have an indirect important implications that I now do not see, from my current point of view. So the issue is the drug, the robots as PED, performance enhancing drugs. Now, I could just, put it on the table right now and even stop discussion right here, when it started, because, I don't have something very definitive to say. Certainly the Israelis, and how do I know that the Israelis, so how can you identify messages that arrive from the Israelis? So I spoke about it a long time ago. The Israelis, it's not only that, they push the most this stupid, and disgusting messages, and they are the coolest and disgusting of all. They are also the quickest. They are the quickest drawers. Like the fastest gunslingers in the West are the Israelis. They are the first, to respond to any question, to any situation. Never mind what kind of new data is exposed to them. Never mind, kind of a new situation and new circumstances. They will always be the quickest to respond. They will always have the answer. לכל שאלה תשובה. The Four Seasons Hotel, everything, they always answer you. They will always answer you. They always have answers. Straight out of the pocket. The fastest gunslingers. And the reason why they are so quick is not only because they are afraid that they will, be lagging behind presumably other intelligence services, but also because they are always in constant competition with each other, the other Israelis. So they want to be the ones that give, each prostitute, in the Shabak or in the Mossad, she wants to be the first, to show her, the answer that was of course dug right off her ass, in the quickest possible way, because before another prostitute that sits besides her will be shoving her a kind of a half-assed answer to the audience. So that's why they are so quick. But of course, it's very rarely, it's a correct answer to any kind of question, because it's it came out of the ass of a prostitute. So I mean, but there are many questions that I mean could be reason here. First of all, we should say that I mean we speak about a lot about the 80s. It's kind of like I mean 1980s is a very important time in the history of the usage of the tea, and also of the international scandals that surrounding this subject. Now, it should be said that the 1980s are known, I mean, like in pop cultures, and certainly American pop cultures, but not only American, but also I mean worldwide, they are presumably known as kind of like I mean the golden age of PEDs. I mean PEDs, performance enhancing drugs. I mean, you know, in general, in the general, like in public, I mean, some people, I mean, use the term steroids, which is mostly true, but it's not only steroids. Like, I mean, famously there is like the HGH, which is very famous today, which is I don't think that it's like I mean, chemically it's not considered a steroid, and so anyway, substances. Now it should be said that mostly when I mean. In a general sense, it should be said that when we speak about such substances, I mean, I'll tell you something now that I mean, it's like everybody. I mean, it's like almost everybody that have known, like even like basic knowledge of sports. I mean, knows that. But I mean, some people do, like I mean, in the you know the very layman, like I mean, without any knowledge, I mean, they don't know it. So maybe I should mention it. That I mean, these things they are not like cocaine or like I don't know, like I mean, the elixir of like you know of Ashafix or I don't know, like I mean, Gedifix, like from you know from Asterix and Obelix, that can make it that you drink it and you become like Superman, and then when it wears off, like you are back to like I mean to being like a regular human. It's not like that. These performance enhancing drugs, all of it, like I mean, whatever it's like AGH or whatever it's like I mean classical steroids or I mean synthetic steroids, like I mean you can. Like, you know, like testosterone, first of all, testosterone, of course, which is the most famous, but also trenbolone and D-bol and, you know, others. This stuff, I mean, it's not like that you eat it and you become Superman. It's not like that. I mean, you consume it, I mean, the athletes consume it over a long period of time. Generally, it's done in what's called cycles, even though it doesn't need to be that way. But, I mean, mostly it's done using what they call cycles, which is a period of between 10 and 18 weeks that they take this, I mean, several, I mean, you know, concoction of substances, and then, I mean, there is like a rest period that they don't take it, and they take like maybe other stuff, and then they take other stuff like that. And doing all the time, they train very hard, and it's and this stuff, I mean, it builds their body, I mean, together with the training, I mean, it should be, of course, accompanied with rigorous training, and of course, I mean, you know, you need, I mean, you know, the proper genetics in order for all of it to be very effective. But all of it together, I mean, gives them like a very important edge over other like I mean, you know, similar you know, like practitioners of the sports that, I mean, and of course they eat, you know, very, I mean, you know, they follow very rigorous diets, and they have very rigorous sleeping, like, you know, practices, and then they don't, like, you know, they generally do not do, like, you know, recreational drugs, even though sometimes they do, and it's also not illegal from like sports perspective, even though it mostly affects them negatively, but for some reason it's also not, I mean, I don't know, maybe for like this is a kind of a controversial issue, like I mean the usage of recreational drugs by athletes, because mostly it doesn't help them at all, like I mean, but anyway, I mean, they mostly, I mean, they follow very healthy lifestyle, and like all of that together, I mean, gives them, I mean, in the long range, very, I mean, better results than, I mean, other artists that would have done the same, but without the performance enhancing drugs. But it's not that, I mean, they you know, they eat like, I mean, you know, they take the pill and then they become Superman. There is no such a thing. I mean, it's true that, I mean, the closest thing to such a thing that ever like existed was actually practice during wars, and mostly above all World War II. World War II, actually, I don't know, not many people know, but actually World War II, I mean, besides, I mean, of course, it's a war that is famous for many, many reasons, but it was actually like, I mean, This was the war on drugs. I mean, I mean the real war on drugs. I mean, not in the modern sense of war on drugs, but I mean, it was a war on drugs. I mean, above all, I mean, much more than any other war, it was a war that was both sides. I mean, both the Axis and the Allies. I mean, used drugs tremendously in tremendous quantities. I mean, famously, it was part of like, I mean, the Manat Krav, like, I mean, the MREs of the Nazis, but also the Americans and the British, especially in the Air Force, used drugs. I mean, in the tremendous quantities. This is one aspect of the war that was not spoken about like a lot in the decades following the war, but in the last couple of decades, it's kind of like gaining like prominence in academic circles. Like, I mean, as an important kind of like subject for research. But I mean, this was actually from all what I know in doing history, this was actually the closest thing to, I mean, what people think about when they think about, like, I mean, people that gain superhuman capabilities after I mean, immediately after they consume drugs. I mean, the closest thing that ever existed was actually during World War II, in both sides. Both, like in the Nazis used this extensively, especially for some reason, especially by the armored corps, like in the people in the tanks, and then the Americans and the British used it also extensively. And as far as I know, mostly like, I mean, by pilots and like people in the Air Force. I don't know for what. I don't know why. I just know it was like that. But in a way, it wasn't like something, it wasn't like something, it wasn't a curiosity. It was done in major scale. Like, I mean, it was part of the war. I mean, it was an important aspect of this war that, I mean, just wasn't spoken about. And of course, you cannot find it like in movies like Saving Private Ryan. But generally, in the last decade or two, I mean, this issue is kind of like gaining prominence in the historiography of the Second World War, the issue of the drugs. But other than that, I mean, there aren't many examples, I mean, from the history of humankind of like special drugs that people eat and become immediately Superman. Like, I mean, like you see in comics. It's generally something that wasn't like part of humanity. And all the PEDs that you hear about in sports, like, I mean, in sports kind of like, I mean, context, that they do not work like that. Again, they work by, I mean, applying it over long periods of time, together with, a lot of like exercise and eating correctly and sleeping, and this is done over like at least many months, if not years, and then you see the effect. But you need I mean, at least a couple of good months to see such an effect, if not years. That's why it's many times it was easy to actually hide it from testers, because if you only test the people, like, I mean, during or after, like, or I mean, just before competitions, they can actually, I mean, choose when to compete and to kind of like, I mean, to manipulate the cycles. I mean, that the drugs will not appear in the tests, and they still, I mean, their blood can be completely clear or almost completely clear of any substance when the competition actually takes place, but it doesn't mean that they will not reap the benefits. Their body will still be, I mean, of course, trained like to a much better extent than if they didn't take the drugs, even though body does not contain actually the drugs when the tests are carried on. Now, some people think about, like, as I started to say, about the 1980s as kind of like the golden age of PEDs, but it's partly true, but it's misleading. It's misleading because there was no golden age of this since the 1950s. I mean, it was started in the 1950s after the invention of the D-ball, which was kind of like an American. It was the American answer to the widespread usage of testosterone by the Soviets. So they invented the D-ball, which is synthetic and since then, I mean, everybody all around the world used it. Both testosterone and the anabol, and like, I mean, many other things, like in huge, like, I mean, proportions, like, I mean, all over the world. I mean, famously, it's so, famous to I don't know, at least in Israel, I mean, people like joke about, like, the Soviet athletes, I mean, mostly about like female athletes, like athletes of like East Germany and the Russian Empire. I mean, during the 60s of the 70s, that were supposedly like, mainly because of all the testosterone. But in reality, everybody took like everything. Like I mean, everybody, like all over the world. It's something that I mean, people just in general, public just don't like to think about it too much because it's kind of it wrecks their experience, like watching the Olympics and so. But it was like it was all over the place, like since the 1950s, and still like that. What is true is that during the 1980s, this was the apex. I mean, this was the height of like of when it was totally legit or almost legit to take it in the American major leagues. This is true. Before that it was not that commonplace, and after that it wasn't. It was never like as commonplace as it were during the 1980s. It was totally something that just I wouldn't say that it was legal or that it was kind of like family friendly, but it was something that was extremely commonplace, like in the NFL and the NHL and baseball. And regarding the NBA, I actually don't know. I mean, for some reason, I don't know, people don't speak about it like in the NBA context, and they still don't, even today. I don't know why. I mean, maybe because historically and even today, people take it less in the NBA. I don't know. Maybe there is less information on the subject, but for some reason, there is much less information, like in public awareness of relationship between the NBA and PEDs than like the other three, majors, like the NHL and the MLA and the NFL. But I don't know why. If you have any kind of explanation, maybe just a coincidence, maybe, I don't know. So the NBA was just like kind of like pretty much exempt from this generalization. But the three other like major leagues, they were like everybody took it during the 1980s. So that is true. But so from this specific American perspective, it's true that this was the golden age. But from any other perspective, every decade since the 1950s until today, including it was the golden age of PEDs. So it's not really something new or kind of like not or unknown. People know about it. So the question is, taking all of this into account, what can you speculate about like the usage of the T as a PED? Both like during the 1980s, which presumably was the golden age, even though, as I say, it wasn't really the golden age because every decade is the golden age of this usage, and also from the perspective of the apocalypse. The torment of the aliens. They use radiation to wreck, to destroy the what I call the Red Neros, which is kind of like the robots that are created in the female bodies of the Titans. So how does it relates to historically the usage of the drug? And also, of course, there is another issue, which is the Israeli angle. So what are the Israelis in this? Are they just drug dealers? The simple answer is yes. But how do they do it, and how are the Americans? How it is done? With of course the management and the cooperation of the Americans. So these are all very important questions. So I leave it for now. I'll finish this video here and put it more than open questions, and maybe later today or tomorrow I will hold another video in which I will suggest a few answers or beginning of answers to these questions, and maybe I will raise some even more questions with this on this topic.